Hi guys, Barney Boy here today, and today we are going to be looking at how to change the tyre on your typical car. So this vehicle here is a Suzuki Vitara. I think it's early 2000s, and basically what we're going to be doing is we've got a flat tyre and we need to change the wheel. Of course, most cars, particularly the older types, they always carry the spare wheel on the vehicle, whether that's on the back or under the boot or even under the vehicle sometimes. So on this car, being with many other Jeeps, the spare wheel is actually at the back of the door. So the first thing we want to do is get that spare tyre off. So let's go and do that now. So we've got that spare tyre off. The next job is to jack the vehicle up a fair few inches off the ground, certainly for the tyre to give way, so you can take that off and put the spare wheel on, of course, once this one has been taken off. So what you can actually do before you actually jack the vehicle up is loosen the bolts on the wheel. Not necessarily take them off completely, but you can certainly loosen them. Okay, so we'll do that now. You may need to stand up and actually relieve some of the pressure by kicking down on this, but you may not have to. And we'll just loosen them, just one or two turns, but making sure they don't come completely off. So just get that one loosened there as well. So these are all now loosened, so they're finger loose, finger tight almost, this top one. And what that means is that now, when we're up there, we're not going to have to be standing and kicking down on the bolts to get them loose. We can just do them by hand, which means minimal shaking for the vehicle whilst it's up on the jack. The first thing to remember when doing this is safety. If you're not comfortable doing it, that's fine. Get a recovery company to come and help. If you're not 100% sure, you have somebody else, they're a bit more experienced or a bit more confident, in which case that's fine. But ultimately, it really is quite straightforward. But again, if you're on the side of the motorway and people are going 70 miles an hour plus, maybe consider if you want to do that at all, because is it worth it? Here, you know, I'm in a yard, it's absolutely fine. If you're in the driveway, it's fine, or right near the curb, then I wouldn't worry about it. This here is called your jack. That's what we're going to use to actually jack the car up. Again, this is often found where the spare tyre is, but particularly it is found under a panel in the boot. So what you want to do is, we know we need to jack it up under here. Refer to your owner's manual, because there'll be particular points where you jack it up. And for here, we want to make sure we get it to a decent height, ready to be jacked up. So again, refer to your owner's manual to be exact where it needs to go, because the last thing you want is this car falling down and damaging the car, or worse, hurting yourself. So I've already referred to this owner's manual. I know exactly where it needs to go. So I'm going to do that, and make sure you do the same. And make sure that the jack is on a solid floor. So we don't want the floor to be uneven. We don't want it to be, for example, you're not going to do this on sand or anything like that. So make sure the floor is not uneven, and make sure that you are putting a solid ground. Things like a house brick or whatever would be quite helpful. And we'll just jack it up. So we can see here, as I'm jacking it up, that this wheel is very nearly off the ground. With a few more inches, we want at least 2, 3, 4 inches clearance. And I'll show you what we do when the wheel's completely off the ground, just to ensure maximum safety. Okay, there we go. We can now see that this is completely off the ground, and the last thing you want to do is put your fingers completely under there, because if that jack fails and it falls, it's going to crush your fingers. That's the last thing you want. So clean your hands, get your breath back, and make sure you do not put your fingers under there. Okay, now what I like to do, just to ensure absolute safety, is with a spare wheel, actually slide it under the car. And what that now means is that when this wheel is off and I'm undoing these bolts, should the jack fail and should the car fall, it's going to land on the wheel, so there'll always be a little bit of clearance for yourself and to minimize damage to the car. So as I done earlier, these bolts were only finger tight, so these are easy enough to take off. So I'll just get all these off, and some of them might just need, as the wheels moved, a little bit more help. But the last thing you want to be doing is kicking down on this bolt, and by having to kick on it, you're shaking the vehicle, and the vehicle may move, and it could cause that jack to fail and slip. Make sure you are only using the jack specific to that vehicle, because the last thing you want is to be using a jack that's designed for a Mini on a huge 4x4, because all jacks have their maximum weight load. So you know, for a Mini it might just be, I don't know, up to 1,000 kilos, 1 ton, but obviously things like a Toyota Hilux may weigh 3 tons, and it'll be a completely different type of jack. So all these bolts are off. Make sure you keep all those bolts in a safe place to the side, so they're not going to roll down a drain, or you're going to lose them. And the next thing we want to do is get this tyre off. When taking the wheel off the tyre, get it by the sides. Do not go underneath, and do not go above. So get it by the sides and just pull that off. There we go. We can see we are now down to the disc and ready to put the spare tyre on. So before we do that, we're going to just check that's all okay, and get the spare tyre out again from the sides, and making sure you're keeping your distance from the underneath of the car, and get the spare tyre out. So that's ready to go on, and then get the tyre that we've just taken off and bring that around here. And the same again, you want to push this underneath, so in the event that jack fails, there is some safety there. Right, clean your hands, particularly here it's quite muddy. My hands get filthy, which isn't good because they tend to slip. And getting that spare tyre, let's just put that on. Perfect, there we go. And that's just pushed in there. Obviously no bolts. Get these bolts again, making it finger tight, keeping your distance, because if that jack fails, it will of course be quite serious. Just get these bolts back on there. Now when putting the bolts back on, what you want to make sure is you're doing them at opposite sides and opposite ends. Because if you tighten all the bolts on the left side, it may not be completely balanced when putting all the bolts back on the right side. Just put it on there. Just get this bolt on here. Now again, I'm just doing it finger tight, mainly for the sake of safety. So now I know, should that jack fail, the car will rest on this wheel. Now with the actual bolt itself, just tighten it a bit more. Again, not to the point where you have to kick down on it, but certainly a bit tighter than what you can do with your hands. And again, as with tightening the bolts with your hands, make sure you're doing it opposite ends and the opposite sides. Just tightening this one here. And we're nearly at a stage where we can bring that jack down and it will rest on this tyre. Alright, nearly at the last one now. So again, the key points to remember here is safety. Number one, first thing, if you're not comfortable doing it, don't do it at all. Right, they're now all on relatively tight. Let's bring out this spare tyre now, the old one, and let's slowly bring that jack down. Slowly Just bringing it down slowly, because the last thing you want to do is do it too quick and the car starts to jutter and adjust. There we go. Get that jack out. There we go. That's on. And now what you can do now that it's on the ground a bit is tighten these just that little bit more now. You've got that stability. The car's not going to shake, and you can get them nice and tight. Don't want to do them too tight. There's no need. But just making sure that these are all on quite tight. And just to make sure they are on, just stand up. And on the leverage, I'll just kick it down only slightly. There's no point in going too tight. You may round off the nut if you do it too tight, or you might damage it. But also, there's no requirement to do that. There's no need. Just keep doing that. Cool. And on the last one. Perfect. There we go. And that, my friends, is how you change a tyre on a vehicle through to the spare. That's the one we've taken off, that's the one we've put on, and that is where I've been kneeling to ensure comfort. So what we'll do now is we'll pack up, we'll put the jack back into the boot, and we'll put the old tyre on the back where it belongs. Again, that's vehicle specific. It may be under the vehicle, maybe actually under the boot itself, or in some cases, particularly modern cars, you may not even have a spare tyre, but they may be run flats. Again, please refer to the owner's manual for that. Thanks for watching, guys. Please subscribe and like as always.